You just threw out a number that made my eyes pop out of my head. $1 million a coin.
Yes.
How far out could that potentially happen? Where is Bitcoin? It's right now north of 100,000, depending on when people are watching this, near all-time highs. Where is it a year from now? Is it too late to get involved with Bitcoin with all-time highs currently? I have crypto FOMO. Do you?
I am crypto clueless.
Crypto clueless.
I don't understand crypto. I don't
Crypto
know where
FOMO.
I'm supposed to spend it. I don't understand it. So I need some education about this.
Also, President Trump, his policies are lifting crypto values, but is his personal involvement hurting trust in the industry? Welcome to the Sanity Podcast. Dave Briggs, Allison Camerot, a couple of former CNN and Fox News anchors. We invite you to please like this video, subscribe to the Sanity Podcast. I got through that without screwing up. I have a massive hangover, and I find talking very difficult.
That's going to be great for the podcast.
Yeah.
But what happened last night?
I had 2 drinks. 2 drinks.
And you can do that before breakfast.
Oh, I usually do before breakfast.
Yeah.
And tequila is my wheelhouse.
I know that.
And I woke up and had no idea where my car was after 2 drinks. So I either was roofied or I drank the worst tequila in the world.
Is it possible you were roofied, or are we just joking? Like, people don't put things into grown men's drinks, do they?
I don't know, man. I mean, I'm kind of old and unattractive, so it'd be very weird. But something went on. Something went into my drink that shouldn't be in my body. Let's just agree on that.
Sorry to hear that. Well, you're a professional, Dave. You're a professional, and you're going to get through this.
Let's soldier through.
You know what gives me a hangover? Crypto. That's what. Because it is so outside of my understanding, and it gives me like a 3-day headache. So I'm so glad that we have our guest today. So we have here Joe Sticco. He is the CEO of Cryptex Finance. He has just been in Washington talking to lawmakers about the future of crypto. So Joe, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Joe, can you just start at the beginning and give me a little crypto 101? Why do I need crypto? What happened to good old fashioned cash and credit cards?
If we're talking about crypto on a macro level, when you look at assets like Bitcoin, Bitcoin is a deflationary asset, meaning that there's a fixed supply of 21 million coins, and there can never be any more created after that. When you look at cash and dollars, those are inflationary assets. So there is a infinite supply, and at any time, somebody can print capital that will reduce the purchasing power of the dollars that you have in your bank account. So the purpose of an asset like Bitcoin or digital gold would be as a hedge against inflation.
That actually makes
sense.
A lot of sense. You should do more of this. But for this conversation, let's keep this just Bitcoin. But one last question before we move solely into Bitcoin. There are 10,000 cryptocurrencies. So why Bitcoin over the other 9,000 plus? And if you can just invent new cryptocurrencies, doesn't that hurt the people like us that say, why would I get in when you can just invent a new coin?
Well, I mean, I can go outside and put dirt in a bottle and say that it's gold, right? It's never going to be gold until it's gold. And Bitcoin is the gold standard. Out of those 10,000 coins that you had mentioned, of course, there's going to be a lot of them that are complete shit, right? So you're not going to really be interested in those. But if you think about it on a layer of what's important or what's relevant, deflationary assets are important. Being able to hedge against inflation is important. And that's something that you're going to be able to do with Bitcoin.
I lied. One last question outside Bitcoin. Meme coins, to your point earlier, are they absolute shit? Do they hurt the industry and the perception of crypto?
I don't think that they necessarily hurt. I think that people have the right, to speculate. And when you think about the internet layer of capital, what is speculation? It's essentially just herd mentality that's FOMOing into an asset because they believe they're going to get an outsized return. And when you have digital assets like meme coins, they essentially build up cult followings on the internet. And in the days prior, you would watch a television show that would have a cult following. You would watch Jerry Springer. Now imagine all the people in the world can speculate on.
But you wouldn't invest in Jerry Springer. I mean,
Well,
it has no inherent value.
100,
Zero.
100% it doesn't. But in the moment of when people are chasing it and money is basically like a domino effect on top of each other, that domino effect works upwards and it works downwards. So if you have an opportunity to chase something in the short term that's going to generate a 1,000% return or a 10,000% return in a very short period of time, people are going to chase that. Does that make it right? No, it doesn't make it right. But at the same time, when it falls and people lose 85 to 90% of their money in a weekend, is that bad for the industry? Of course. But people by nature are greedy. People like to gamble, and people are going to chase returns, whether it's at a casino, whether it's at a sports betting book, whether it's on a hockey team. They're always going to speculate on anything.
So, Joe, I mean, I'm such a beginner with this. What's the difference between crypto and Bitcoin, or is Bitcoin a version of crypto?
Bitcoin was the first cryptographic asset, meaning that a cryptocurrency is something that is powered by a blockchain. So it's essentially just computer code, zeros and ones, where the code is essentially mined from blocks and the coins are created from the blocks. So the power that it takes now, especially if you look at something called the hash rate, which is like the network creating, coins, it's at all-time highs. So the energy that it takes to mine Bitcoin is a lot, and it's really difficult to mine. So it's getting more and more scarce every single day. And the scarcity is what creates the value of it.
And so is it too late? Is it too late for people to get into, if you're saying that it's a finite product and it's already gotten so scarce and it's so hard to get into, is it too, have people missed the boat?
No.
Why?
In my opinion, absolutely not. Because when you look at the trajectory of national debt, when you look at where we are in terms of money printing, we printed, I believe it's something like 80 to 100 years of money supply in 5 years, which crushes the purchasing power of your dollars when you go and buy goods. And with Bitcoin, especially now that we're getting regulatory clarity from the United States and we're starting this process, the institutional flows that are going to come into the space for people and banks and other financial institutions, it's going to be massive. And not only that, you have governments that are supporting it. So I think you're going to see Bitcoin at some point over $1 million a coin. And it's not going to be because you chased it. It's going to be because dollar debasement is going to get to that point. And more people are waking up every day to the fact that they could hedge with a digital asset. So gold has been around for 3,000 years. It's always hedged against dollars. And now, 100 years, 1,000 years later, 2025, we have digital gold, and it's going to have the same effect.
You just threw out a number that made my eyes pop out of my head. $1 million a coin.
Yes.
How far out could that potentially happen? Where is Bitcoin? It's right now north of 100,000, depending on when people are watching this, near all-time highs. Where is it a year from now?
I think in a year from now, it's probably somewhere in the $200,000 to $250,000 range. I mean, obviously, this is not financial advice. This is my own personal opinion. But I think that at the end of the day, within the next decade, you're going to see Bitcoin in the $1 million range. And the same people 10 years ago, when it was, a couple $100 and we said it would be $100,000 in 10 years, laughed at us. And they're not really laughing so much anymore.
Joe, I asked some of our followers online for some questions that they have. A lot of people are confused about Bitcoin and crypto. This comes from James. He says, Allison, I have a question. If the value of crypto is based on blockchain and that is immutable and tracks every transaction across the chain, how did all of Sam Bankman-Fried's crypto disappear?
Well, that's a wonderful question. And it's a very, very simple answer. So there's this thing in the world that's called supply and demand, right? So you have the perception of a business, and that business creates, let's say, 10 billion coins out of thin air. It then takes 2 to 3% of that 10 billion coins and puts them on the open market. Let's say those coins trade at $50, right? So now that business on paper is going to be worth tens of billions of dollars. However, 95 to 96% of the supply isn't even on the game board. Only that small little 2% pieces. So now when you sell, or there's a large black swan event on that little 2 or 3%, it bankrupts the other 95 to 96%. So that money that was being quoted as money, that was air. That was not real, and that was a game of perception. And thankfully, people like Sam Bankman-Fried and others who tried to run scams like that are right where they belong, in jail. And ideally, we don't see things like that again.
My hangover's back.
Yeah, SBF really set this industry back years, if not decades. But another thing that I think hurts mainstream adoption is 30% of all Bitcoin is controlled by 216 holders, and one company, MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor, control 3% of Bitcoin. That is unfathomable for a currency. How big a problem is that the concentration of wealth is so minute?
I mean, what's the difference when you look at worldwide currencies that are controlled by countries? What's your percentage of ownership of those? You know, it's like, it's the same type of question where at the end of the day, Saylor is a genius for being one of the first for acquiring Bitcoin, for buying it. And if he's right, then he has every right to do well off of that. You know, everybody today has the opportunity to buy Bitcoin at
How? How do we all buy Bitcoin? And what's the best way? And the question I got time and time again on social media is, if I'm Bitcoin curious, what's the best way to dip my toe in the pool?
So if you're in the United States, there are several centralized exchanges that you could use to acquire your Bitcoin. Once you acquire it, you have the right to hold it in a private wallet where you set up a wallet that you control, that nobody else has access to. And you could simply just transfer your Bitcoin to your private wallet and hold it there. And setting up a wallet in 2025, it's an incredibly easy thing to do. I would definitely recommend to any users listening to do your research on that. If you're not comfortable with setting up a private wallet, you could buy it directly through a centralized exchange in the United States. There are many that are heavily regulated and are heavily required to manage your Bitcoin for you. And you could just hold Bitcoin on one of those exchanges. But my recommendation would be to learn how to hold it yourself, put it in your own wallet, take your own custody, and control your own money.
Joe, it's impossible to talk about crypto without talking about the Trump family and how Donald Trump in particular has become a huge cheerleader, consumer, and has, it appears, exploited it for his own family's wealth. So they, all the reports are that they have increased their wealth by hundreds of millions of dollars because of the company that they've set up, World Liberty Financial. And so tell us about, you were just with lawmakers this week in Washington. So what are they trying to do about regulation? What are they trying to do about making sure that, the president doesn't just control all of this and amass wealth for himself? It feels to many people like, from the outside, like a grift. So are lawmakers talking about that?
Well, to be fair, I think the real grift was the 4 years that we had zero clarity as American citizens and builders in the digital asset space, and we had no idea what was going on, while we repeatedly went to the prior administration asking every day, what are we doing? How do we create this? How do we do it right? And nobody whatsoever wanted to talk to us, let alone even listen to us.
But who was making money during those 4 years?
Who was making money during that 4 years was the same people that have been making money for 100 years, the banks. Not the people, the banks.
So the banks were investing in crypto during the Biden years.
100%. They were talking it down the same time that they were accumulating it. Prices were getting, and this is a fact. You could look this up on any blockchain or digital asset software. Like, they were accumulating, they were talking it down. And what Trump did was, for the first time in the history of this industry, go to Congress to provide regulatory clarity for all US citizens. So at the end of the day, I, as a builder in the digital asset space, now have the ability to speak to the United States Treasury, to speak to our congressional lawmakers while they try to pass bipartisan bills to help not only our industry, but also our country. So for me, my opinion might be slightly biased because I'm a builder in this industry, and I'm trying to build the future of financial assets, not only for individuals that participate, but for the American country, like for our.
Yeah, no, I get it. You have skin in the game for sure. But I guess I just mean what regulation, the fact that there isn't enough regulation, or
Yes.
I don't know if you agree, but that the fact that the Trump family has made hundreds of millions of dollars, is there a regulation in place right now? Or what are lawmakers planning to do? I mean, I've read a little bit about the Genius Act. What
Yes.
is that? Are those the guardrails?
So the Genius Act is designed for stablecoin regulation. So what happens is, like, there's these things called stablecoins. So we talked about Bitcoin, where it's digital gold, it's one-to-one, it's backed. Stablecoins are one-to-one backed US dollars, where you can now transact your dollars on the internet. So if you wanted to be in an example where you could buy McDonald's, you would never buy McDonald's with a deflationary asset for an inflationary calorie. You would use a stable coin to do that. You would use a one-to-one backed dollar to go buy a cheeseburger, right? So the Genius Act sets in place the requirements of stablecoin issuers and regulates them in the United States. We also have the Clarity Act, which brings market regulation to protocols and to people building in the decentralized finance space and all of the industries that are encapsulating the digital asset space, and brings them clarity for the first time in since inception, right? So for me, these are the most forward-looking things I've ever seen in this space, and I think it's going to bring a ton of clarity, not only to builders but to citizens of the country, and help us maintain our financial stronghold as American innovators and financiers.
Joe Sticco with us, the Cryptex co-founder. The skeptic in me has two last questions on that. One is that the two brightest financial minds, arguably, of our generation, Jamie Dimon, JP Morgan CEO, called Bitcoin crypto a pet rock that's best use case is money laundering and fraud. And Warren Buffett, who may be the brightest financial mind ever, or at least in a small handful of them, called it rat poison squared. How do you answer those critiques?
Well, I think with Jamie Dimon, I have a very, very simple response. Don't look at what they say, watch what they do. And 100%, he absolutely called Bitcoin rat poison, and now they sell it at JP Morgan. So, take that for what it's worth. And Warren Buffett has always been and is, in my opinion, the most prolific investor of all time. Nothing but respect and admiration for Warren Buffett, but traditionally he has been a value investor, meaning he looks for things that are low beta to the market, meaning lower risk, and more of a value play, where Bitcoin is a highly speculative asset prior to all the things that we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years, where things have started to stabilize a bit. So I think, yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
And so, Joe, back to the Trump family of it all. I know that you're saying that you're policy-wise, you're very happy with what President Trump has done in terms of creating this entire new avenue. But do you think it's a conflict of interest? I mean, this whole world, Liberty Financial, and the fact that the Trump family has already made hundreds of millions of dollars off of this, and the anonymity piece of it, that apparently other countries and people from foreign countries can buy into it without having to disclose, without the public knowing if it's coming from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I like to not really get involved in the political aspect of it. I think that the president and his team are doing an incredible job on the regulatory front and on the clarity front. I think Congress is doing an incredible job, bipartisan, in trying to get laws and regulations passed for, U.S. consumers. that allow builders like myself to innovate. And that's really where I want to keep my focus.
I understand. So you're comfortable with what's happened thus far?
I'm comfortable with being a builder in America and trying to innovate for the world and create products that help our country and allow financial freedom.
I mean, it is by definition a conflict of interest. Really. I mean, you don't need to, I mean, he has made at least $300 million on transaction fees alone, and many feel billions of dollars for the family. And while he single-handedly boosts the value with his own policies and I mean, it is the definition. Like it is.
No, of course.
You can be comfortable with it. It is a grift in every way, shape, or form. I am curious your thoughts on the biggest headline right now, which is in New York City, these men were kidnapped and tortured and threatened with chainsaws to simply give up their passcode. And this has happened many, many times.
When was that?
Just late May. And these men were arrested. How big a problem is that for those that don't trust getting in here, that you can literally be held hostage for a simple passcode and that wealth gone, evaporated in an instant?
Well, I think that at the end of the day, there's always going to be circles of bad people in the world. It's an unfortunate reality of the world in 2025. There's always going to be horrible people. Do I think somebody's going to try to kidnap you and hold you hostage for $5,000 or $10,000 or even $100,000 of Bitcoin? No. These are incredibly rare instances. If you have millions of Bitcoin holders around the world and you have 3 people where this happens to, you have a much better chance of getting struck by lightning than you do of being held hostage.
But I feel like today in your compromised state, you could be kidnapped.
Yes.
Like you
could
just
be
walk
kidnapped
out
for
of
anything today in a compromised state. I mean, I could walk outside my house and get kidnapped. It's a scary time in the world, so.
True, but Joe, you're not as hungover as Dave.
I think by a 13-year-old girl, I could be kidnapped.
You could be
right
tackled.
Now.
Right now.
Yeah. It would not be difficult.
Not at all.
At all.
My last question, this comes from another viewer. This says, I'm worried not enough women are getting their slice of the future wealth in crypto for our kids.
Great question.
It's all
Great
gone.
question.
Yeah. So women, as you know, I think I speak for all womankind when I say this is not anything we ever really wanted to have to work on and focus on. We're busy. So What's the answer for that?
I think that is a phenomenal question. And it's something that as builders in the space, we advocate for every single day. And what makes me the happiest in our industry is that there are so many bright women in digital assets that are building out the future of this world. And when I tell you that they are absolute geniuses, they are absolute geniuses. And I would invite anybody listening to research some of the people in the space, and especially the women in the space. And they're brilliant, right? So as a woman, in America, I think like anybody else, you want to educate yourself. You want to learn more about the future of currency and the future of digital assets. Look at things like Bitcoin and just learn about them, because this is going to be the future and women play an integral part of it.
There's this whole cottage industry online in terms of like TikTok and on YouTube of women educating women about this because they realize that there's a, dearth of information.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are like 65-35. I've covered Bitcoin conferences, and I'm sure, Joe, you would agree. It's like 90-10 men to women at these conferences. So
it's getting better. In the last couple of years, it's definitely improved. You are absolutely right, though, in saying conferences were an absolute sausage fest.
I mean, good luck getting laid at a Bitcoin conference, right?
Wow, interesting.
I mean,
I see you were covering.
Joe, how difficult is it to get laid at a crypto conference?
I mean, I never mix business and pleasure together. I keep all my relationships private, so that's not even something that I'm thinking about at conferences. But I think that
you're not going to take the bait.
Thank you for being a professional. Thank
you
for being the professional.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I do have one last question for you, and it's a mainstream adoption. We're seeing you can spend in one way or another Bitcoin at like Best Buy and Walmart and Nike.com and Expedia. Pottery Barn. I can even buy a Chipotle burrito, which I may do in about an hour here because of the hangover. But why would I ever spend my Bitcoin when if I got in, I believe this is an asset that is going to the moon? Would you advise anyone to ever spend it on such transactions?
10,000% no. So there's a reason why And we're talking about grifts here, right? Like, why would I sell an asset that's appreciated tens of thousands of % over the last decade for a pair of sneakers? It's just, that's their way of accumulating more Bitcoin to enrich themselves. Now, I'm not saying you can't use digital assets to buy a pair of sneakers, but that's what stable coins are for. That's what one-to-one US dollars are for. That's where I'm going to go buy my sneakers and my hamburger and my Chipotle or anything else that I want to eat. I'm going to do that with stablecoin. My Bitcoin, I'm going to protect like my gold. There is no way in the world you would ever take off your earrings, Allison, and go buy a taco with them.
Unless I was really hungry, but I hear
right,
you. I hear you.
right.
No earrings.
Because I bought taco.
You bought the taco. Yeah, you're never going to do that. You're going to use stablecoin to do that, or another one-to-one backed dollar asset, and your Bitcoin and your valuable scarce digital assets, you're going to keep and invest for the long term.
Okay, I feel better about that because
Good.
I just my head was
That-
really hurting because of that concept. So thank you for adding
Absolute
clarity.
worst idea imaginable. Please don't do it. I'm not saying don't use digital assets to buy things, because at the end of the day, if we're right, you'll be able to use your Apple Pay with digital assets the same way you have with dollars, right? So the only difference is that when you use digital assets, it's fine. Just use a stable coin, use a one-to-one backed US dollar or real or euro or wherever you are in the world. But keep your Bitcoin protected, keep it locked up, and don't let anybody convince you to use it to buy a pair of sneakers, please.
Joe, this is great. This is really helpful. Thanks for the tutorial on this. I feel like I understand it a teeny little bit more.
Yeah,
now.
I absolutely do. Joe Sticco, the Cryptex co-founder, really appreciate it. Please like this video, subscribe to the Sanity podcast. Joe, thanks very much. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Joe.